We are making our way to Tipperary Waters because they let us out so early in the tide. So they let us out around 4. High tide was about 5:30. So the only hitch is that, you know, the current here in the channel is a lot stronger than predicted. It's really slowing us a good 2 knots, I'd say, maybe knot and a half. So we're only making about 3.5 knots right now, and it's like a little 45 minutes till sunset. So we're about we're just right at high tide. I think we're right at high tide, and it's kind of weird that we have an adverse current at high tide. Welcome to Darwin. Here you go. Here's Marcel with me. Hey. So it went pretty well. There was no leaking I could see. The Thru-Hull seemed to be fixed, and the leaking we saw in the engine on the first splash too when we got pulled out, we didn't see that. So there was that hose that was leaking out water cooling, saltwater cooling liquid, and I clamped down on those hoses the couple days we were back at the marina, and that seemed to do it. So even the hose was a little big, it seemed to work if I tightened them down really well. So it was like 1/8 of an inch too big relative to what we had before. So that so far it's been so good. I think the only downside is this current, and we might get into Tipperary like after 7. I was saying 6:37, but the way the current's like really slowing us down right here, it might be longer. This should be slack water, but it's just not. And so this is my experience, but overall it's really good because there's no wind, right? So there's no wind against current, and so it's not choppy or anything. It's very nice, and so that seems pretty good to me. The thing about Tipperary is the channel to Tipperary is full of boats. So if you're looking like for a channel that is like clear, no, it's full of boat moorings. So you just have to be prepared to dodge boats on moorings if you're going into Tipperary. So we really didn't have any time to put up the sails. We're just kind of rushing into Tipperary, get around the corner. Of course, the currents slowed us down, but we did get in there just right before dark, which was pretty lucky that we didn't have to anchor that night, given the currents. The engine worked like a champ, and the new Thru-Hull also did not leak. So about 10 months ago, we had to install this plastic sea strainer into the engine because I was working on a bilge alarm that was mandated by our insurance surveyor, and Sophie wasn't looking where she was going, and she fell in and broke the bronze sea strainer. It did have brass parts, and that's how she broke it. She broke it at the brass parts, and I couldn't replace any of it before we needed to haul out last year. So it took. So I didn't have the parts until this year to install it. Thankfully, what took me maybe almost a week to install this crappy one, which its O-ring is all messed up for some reason. It was leaking with the bronze Perco 5/8 inch 493 strainer, like the one that was originally in the boat. That took that long, but it only took me a day to install it. So I was very happy that it was so easy to install, although I did do a bit of prep work coming into it. And I guess we'll save this as a spare, but I'm just happy that we're back to having not a plastic sea strainer that leaks, especially going offshore. So you can see the emergency plastic sea strainer is leaking there, and it's not fitting very well. And you can see how well the 5/8 inch 493 Kirko strainer fit once I got it all tightened down. It's great to have a proper sea strainer for the engine. And I mean, in defense of Sophie, who was 11 at the time, I should have closed the opening when I left it, instead of leaving it open like that and expecting people to walk over it. I should close that at, and from now on, when I'm working in the builds like that, I always, if I leave that spot, I put the wooden grate in there so that people can't fall in if they're not watching where they're going. So the sail into Tipperary was pretty good. The motor did the work the whole way, and then we've been here several days so far. I think it's going to come out to be about 8 or 9 days here in Tipperary doing maintenance. So the engine maintenance, we have some of it done. The oil change, I'm in the middle of changing the antifreeze. Unfortunately, I had to switch antifreeze, and that meant I had to flush the system, and the flushing the system's been taking a lot longer. But I'm going to go from one green to another green, but they don't have Prestone green here in Australia, at least widely available. Haven't been able to find it anywhere in Darwin, for example, or in Cairns, and I looked, and I'm just out of it. The depth sounder, that the antifreeze has been leaking out of one of the depth sounders and causing that to fail. So I put that back in, and also just tried to seal it up with Sikaflex, which is kind of like 4200, something like that. Silkaflex 291i, I think. That's kind of a softer, removable sealant. And then the autopilots, I've been testing to see that verify that the wheel pilots are actually working. I was able to get the below decks bike chain autopilot, the rotary autopilot system working. I had reinstalled the rudder sensor wrong, and that was why it needed that. And that leaves me with the kind of the bronze sea strainer to put in, and I'm kind of gearing for that, but I haven't got to it yet. And also I'd like to put in the new hand lift pump on the engine, and the new hand lift pumps hose, because both of those one is really rusty, and the other one is not really sucking very well. So you're pretty much relying on starting the engine to get to do the bleeding. So to replace both those, I did replace the water pump, which was leaking, with a new one, and now it's not leaking, so that's awesome. The other thing is like I also replaced the V-belt's pulley. The pulleys on both the V-belt and on the old water pump were getting all kind of rusty, and I think we're degrading the belts a little bit faster and chewing up the belts. So having kind of the new ones that are smooth, the smooth paint job, I think will help with that. There's also a big round thing that is turned from the engine that I have not been able to replace. I have to think about how you do that, but I don't have a replacement for that either, so so I can't do that. So that, long and short, the belts aren't going to be 100% perfect, and there'll be a little bit of chewing of them. So yeah, so I think those are the major things we want to do. Border Force said you can only
check out Monday through Friday. So that's what we're going to check out on Monday. So we'll probably leave here on a Sunday and anchor in Fanny Bay, and then we'll in the morning get up and pick up the anchor and go to the quarantine dock. Maybe we'll get some fuel while we're at because there's also a fuel dock there, and then that's about it. So we're just making progress. It's been like it is absolutely wonderful to be not at the boatyard, Spot On Marine. Just the cumulative effect of that man's verbal abuse, in addition to the fact that that's just a miserable place to be. It is so nice not to have to deal with his constant verbal abuse of Michael Orr. All right, subscribe. Before we left Darwin for Indonesia, we've got to help out the Norwegian skipper Paul sail his boat into Cullen Bay and help him with the dock lines. He's got a charter sailing school that he runs on his beautiful 47-foot aluminum sailboat. So you can see our offshore trip, 11 days from Darwin to Madonna Bay, Lombok, Indonesia.